Ruth in the Green Book sort of fell on me by accident. Maybe about 4 years ago, I was at a funeral, and the grandfather came down from New York City, and he was looking for a Green Book. He thought he still needed one, and this was 10 years ago. And so I asked him what was the Green Book, and he started telling me, and it was a book started by Victor Green, a mailman from Harlem, who started a travel guide for black people in 1936. And he published it until 1964, till the Civil Rights Bill was passed. This book is about a little girl named Ruth. It's in 1952 Chicago. She's going down to visit her grandmother. And at the first stop, the father fills up with gasoline. Ruth asks to use the restroom, and the mother asks for the key. And the station attendant says he cannot do that. And Ruth doesn't understand why she cannot use the restroom. And this is the conversation a parents are having, explaining to her about discrimination and the Jim Crow law. Ruth never heard this before. I'm old enough to remember these days. And a little girl asked me, had I ever seen a dinosaur? You know? And she thought it was that long ago, and I said, well, this is not quite that long ago. It's pretty much more recent than that. And so, but if you're a certain age, you remember this conversation with your parents. They had the conversation with you. Some incident happened, and you had to hear it. It seemed like they waited until something happened. And there's an interesting story behind ESSO getting involved in this. As I mentioned earlier, Victor Green was an African-American mailman who was discriminated against on the road taking his wife to Richmond every year. They got other African-American mailmen around the country. They asked folks in their routes to be in his book. And they got addresses, no phone numbers, just addresses. So if you had a Green Book, you'd just show up at someone's house, knock on the door and say, I saw your home listed in the Green Book. And these were called tourist homes. But ESSO at the time was owned by John D. Rockefeller. And they would sell the Green Books at most of their stations. And they hired African-American men to own their own service stations. And the ones that weren't owned by African-Americans, you still could get service there, use the restroom, and buy refreshments. They spend the night with the family near Tennessee. Now this is 100 miles out of the way. She never knew her color was an issue before. You think Ruth's parents should have mentioned this to her before the trip?
Yeah.
And Ruth is saying to herself, were these good guys or bad guys? And then she understands that this was the law, and she's looking at things differently. And she's thinking about how she can be a better person. Has she ever discriminated against anyone? And on the back page is the history of the Green Book, what it looked like back in the day.